Norman is a man who takes his checks very seriously. But it's someone else checking his 7 trucks he's nervous about as he transports fresh produce across the English Channel.
We've just started our tomato season.
So how quickly does that need to be delivered here?
Next day.
Haulage is an industry in which time really is money. When his truck sits still, quality of produce goes down and his drivers are still on the clock. From January 1st, there could be a lot more sitting still.
We've had trucks sat for 8 hours, just waiting to get on a ferry.
What impact does that have on your bottom line?
Well, it's massive because nobody wants to pay for that. Profit margins in haulage are very slim as it is, and you get some of your fleet sat in those queues, and that's your profit gone for the week.
Who do you think is going to end up bearing the brunt of those costs? Customers having to pay more, or do you think it will end up being you and your bottom line?
The costs will have to be passed on in the long run, and it'll be the end user that'll end up paying, because there's only so long that companies can stand to lose that sort of money.
This is the queue Norman's wagons was stuck in last week. Mile after mile of lorries lining up to board boats in Dover as French border police practice checking all trucks. But this could be the new normal, even if the government gets a Brexit deal.
If we get a deal, if this week a deal is signed, is that it? Are all your woes set aside then?
No, it's not, because then, it's still a nightmare until we know what sort of deal is struck, if there is going to be a deal. We still don't know what to plan for. There is going to be, come what may, customs formalities.
And their formalities and queues the government is preparing for, creating colossal car parks where once was Kent countryside. Today, though, the Transport Secretary offered the industry some advice.
They need to be aware of everything that's in this manual that you can download or visit one of these information advice sites, or come and see my friend Alvin here if you happen to be in South Mims.
But Alvin doesn't have all the answers, say the British Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you for everything you've been doing.
The BCC have identified 35 key questions where companies need answers over Brexit. For some sections, it said the government provided, quote, wholly inadequate information on which to plan, including very limited guidance on moving goods between Northern Ireland and Great Britain, key details on tariffs, including what rates will be levied, and there's not enough guidance on how quotas for a range of exports will be administered. With time ticking down, some are wondering, are answers really this thin on the ground, or is this the posturing of hard negotiations?
Businesses that trade with the EU have been asking for years for details about how the new system will work. And yet, here we are just 24 days away, and lots of it remains, let's be generous and call it unclear. Some trade experts, though, say it is highly likely that the government has worked out the technical arrangements that will keep ports like this operating smoothly. But none of that will matter if just one or two thorny issues remain unresolved. As the saying goes, until everything's agreed, nothing is agreed. And that is the uncertainty businesses are having to deal with.
There is another uncertainty, how the new customs IT system will cope when it's eventually switched on.
It doesn't fill us with confidence at all.
When will they be pressure tested?
Well, they're going to be pressure tested when they're switched on at the end of this month. We'll find out whether or not they're going to withstand it or fall over.
The government say huge preparations have been put in place to get hauliers ready. Hauliers are unconvinced, and soon they, and we the customers, will find out.
Well, we did ask the government for an interview, but no one was available to appear on the programme. In a moment, we'll be talking to the strongly pro-Brexit MP, Peter Bone. First, though, earlier I spoke to his Conservative colleague, Tom Tugendhat, who's chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee. And I asked him whether the government's suggestion that it would remove clauses in the internal market bill that proved controversial with the EU was a sign of compromise, which could encourage him.
Well, I hope it does. Let's wait and see what comes out. But we all know that what we want to get to is a deal, and if there are obstacles that wouldn't be necessary if there was a deal, let's just remove them.
But how urgent is the need to compromise in your view?
The need to get an agreement is pretty urgent. I mean, we're running down the clock to the 31st of December. That's not a huge secret. The calendars are pretty public, and we know that the implications are that after that, all we'll have to do is come back and start again, because the idea that we can go for the next sort of 20, 30 years without an agreement with our closest trading partners would be somewhat strange.
A year ago, Boris Johnson said that it would be a failure of statecraft if a deal wasn't reached. Who would own that failure? Would it be the UK or the EU or both?
I think both would. I mean, frankly, one side has long said that an agreement is possible and even easy, and the other side has emphasised their deal-making ability. And so I think it would reflect very poorly on the leadership of both sides.
Boris Johnson and his colleagues have previously at various different times said that a deal would be easy, as you point out. Why do you think it is proving so difficult?
Well, I'm not sure it's an enormous surprise to those of us who've studied the European Union for a long time. I mean, there is a great misunderstanding as to what the European Union is. It's not a state. So it doesn't have the flexibility of a state. It doesn't have a single polity or a single entity. Effectively, the way that the European Union negotiates is a little bit like the car driver playing chicken. It starts the car, drives towards the opponent, and then throws the steering wheel out the window. And because they can do that, because they've got 27 countries, and in order to get to the negotiating starting point, they've had to compromise within themselves. So by the time they meet whoever they're negotiating with, there isn't a huge amount of flexibility.
Why do you think Boris Johnson wasn't aware of that, or perhaps he was and chose to ignore it?
I'm sure he's aware of it, and he believes that there are ways of getting around this, and I look forward to seeing how he manages it.
Obviously, you voted Remain. Have you come round to Brexit in any way since then, or is it as bad as you feared it would be?
Well, I'm not going to say it's any great surprise. I mean, there is a reason I voted to stay part of the negotiating table that decides half of our trade and so much of the regulations that our companies have to apply.
But the succeeding months, years, haven't converted you to the Brexiteers' cause in any way?
I'm not sure what I'd be converted to, because we don't know what the outcome is. I'm certainly persuaded that Britain has a positive future ahead of it. I think there are various ways of doing that, and we're going to have some sort of an agreement with our European partners over the next few years. And basically 3,000 years of British history is how do we get on with Europeans? And the next 3,000 years of British history is still going to be how do we get on with Europeans? Okay, you don't like the European Union, we'll have to find another way.
A long road ahead. Tom Tugendhat, thanks very much. Well, I'm joined now by the Conservative MP, Peter Bone. Mr Bone, Boris Johnson is meeting Ursula von der Leyen face-to-face in Brussels. Are you worried he might concede too much to the EU?
Oh, just reverse. I think a deal must nearly be there. Otherwise, Boris wouldn't be going to Brussels. And he will put the British case with charm. And I really hope they can overcome the differences, because it's in the EU's interest as well as the UK's to get a trade deal. It's in everyone's interest. Hopefully they can do it.
Some of your Brexiteer colleagues seem a little bit jittery that he might be sort of compromising too much. You're confident that any deal he comes back with will be a deal you can back? Well,
absolutely. I have great confidence in Boris, and I haven't heard of those jitters you talk about. My colleagues from the Brexit side are 100% behind Boris. He will not come back with a deal that doesn't comply with the principles of Brexit. And I would bet my house on that. So, no, I think I mean, you couldn't have anyone better to go and talk to someone in the negotiations than Boris. And the fact that he's going, I think, is very encouraging. And I think it's quite likely we will now get a deal this week.
So he's your man. He's the arch Brexiteer. I just wanted you to say you haven't heard these colleagues who had jitters. Steve Baker was talking about sending in a letter, if the deal didn't match up to expectations. But you think Boris Johnson is, he's the Brexiteer to end all Brexiteers?
Goodness me, he led the Brexit campaign. He became Prime Minister. He won the general election with a huge majority on the basis of getting Brexit done, and he took us out of the European Union earlier this year. We're no longer part of the European Union. He's delivered. Now, whether we have a trade deal on the 31st of December or not, we're out of the EU and the transition period's over. I hope there's a deal because it's in everyone's interest. But if it's not, we'll trade on WTO rules. The biggest trading country we deal with is America, and we don't have a trade deal with them.
Isn't it curious that the former Cabinet Minister, Liam Fox, said this would be the easiest deal in history? Why do you think it has proved so difficult to negotiate?
Well, Liam's absolutely right. It would have been the easiest deal to do because everything, we're aligned. We used to trade. We're used to trading with no tariffs, and all we were asking for was a deal very similar to what the EU's done with Canada. And I don't think this is being blocked by people in the EU who see the economic benefit of doing the deal. I think it's being blocked by people making some political point, and it appears in particular the French.
So it is the French, it's France's fault?
It normally is.
Through history. I mean, don't you accept some responsibility from the UK's part that things have proved pretty tricky?
No, absolutely. Up until Boris became leader and prime minister, we had a dreadful time in the negotiations. We rolled over every time the EU asked for something. And then, of course, when Boris came, he laid out exactly what we would accept. We got the withdrawal agreement. We're out of the EU, and we've clearly laid down what we expect is a fair trade deal. And I think a lot of people in the EU want to sign it. I just fear there are a few that are blocking it, as I say, for political reasons.
The Bank of England governor has said that no deal would have a bigger impact than COVID. Do you think that will be weighing on Boris Johnson's mind as he prepares to concede, move a little bit in the EU's direction?
I haven't seen that comment from the governor of the Bank of England, and I think that's extraordinary. The idea that
he made it a few weeks ago.
Yeah, because look what's happened over COVID. That can't possibly be in any way true. I think, yes, a deal's better for everyone. But of course, if we can't do it, we'll continue trading with the EU and they'll continue trading with us. Just that prices will be higher, which we don't want, and trade will be less efficient, which we don't want. That's why you do free trade deals, to make it cheaper for consumers and more efficient for business. So let's hope we can get one.
Peter Bone, thanks very much.
Thank you.